All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. I think we can get started. It's 2:05 my time. So this is the Game Builder call, the 7th edition, and yeah, the October version. Really excited to have all of you guys here today. Yeah, let's get started. As usual, this is being recorded. It's taking place in the Cartesi developer community Discord. If you're watching the recording, yeah, we'd love to have you here. We love to talk about, games, on-chain games, and yeah, love to jam on everything gaming related in these calls. So we'd love to have anyone participate in the future. Um, about Cartesi, we will also be in Istanbul if you're around. A couple events here. This is not the full list yet, but we will be hosting the VM Day on Monday. We will be talking at the Restaking Summit and at all 2 days, and I'll be joining the Autonomous World Assembly as a participant, and we will be at the hackathon on Saturday, Sunday. So if you're planning to hack something cool, maybe something game related, we will have a track there as well, and you can also earn a bit of cash on the side. Great. Quick recap for anyone new here on Cartesi and why we're actually interested in on-chain games. Basically, Cartesi allows you to spin up your own app-specific rollup, right, on top of Ethereum or on top of other EVM layers such as Optimism. This is everyone is kind of doing this nowadays, like app-specific rollups, especially in the on-chain game space, because as an on-chain game builder, you probably don't want to face block space constraints, or you often don't want to face those. So if you can tap into the full power of the CPU and not basically share a VM with anyone else, that can be quite beneficial. And yeah, you regain some predictability, etc. So depending on what you want to do, app-specific rollups can be a really, really good move. Now, on top of that, the interesting part about Cartesi is actually our virtual machine, right? We have this VM that is actually emulating a traditional computer chip, a RISC-V instruction set architecture, and that basically allows us to run basically unmodified Ubuntu on top of it, which is super cool because that comes with a ton of abstractions. You can, for example, you can use any language that would run on Linux traditionally, but also tap into complex libraries. For example, like you could run a physics engine on top of this as well, right? Which is super cool in the case of gaming, for example. So the idea is like basically make it super easy to onboard people and to actually run traditional software, let's say, in a verifiable manner. Let's not forget that part. Great, that was the quick overview of Cartesi. I think most people here are familiar already, but this is the agenda for today. So we will have 15 minutes of ecosystem updates. Then we have an awesome guest speaker, Ulysse, Small Brain Devs here, who will talk about what he's been building, some awesome stuff. And that might overlap a bit with our discussions. It usually does, so we can mix things up at the end and just chat about anything you guys want. So let's start with the ecosystem updates, I'd say. And on the ecosystem update side, we actually had the Cartesi Experiment Week last week, which was basically everyone, all the contributors, some grantees, some, also external parties. Basically, the community was able to participate in this hackathon, an internal hackathon, if you will. So grantees working on architecture, for example, stopped doing their day job and actually started building applications and tooling and stuff like that. Essentially, whatever they wanted to build on top of Cartesi, which has been a really great learning experience for everyone, I think. Essentially, eating our own dog food, let's say, and kind of learning, okay, how to actually kind of taking a new perspective on things, I would say. So from this experiment week, we had like 16 projects come out, like from varying perspectives, doing stuff at the application layer, doing stuff more, at the infrastructure layer as well. Some amazing projects, and we won't cover all of these today. We'll focus on the gaming side. And for this specific session, we will start with the two first ones. But we had, to kind of shout out the games we had shipped out, which we'll talk about in a second, Cryptopia, which we will also talk about in a second, who Danilo will talk about. We had the dApp sharding chess game, which is trying to create different shards if you have multiple people trying to play games. We had a werewolf game. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the board game. Super cool game. I love to play the little girl. Bring that on chain. We had Arena Mayhem, sort of an auto battler where you can chain characteristics, and we had Newton trying to bring Pybolit, the physics engine, on chain. So we will talk about the last four in the next session and focus today on Shipped Out and Cryptopia. So I'd like to ask Augusto to maybe start talking about Shipped Out. Augusto, I don't know if you want to share a screen.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
For the invitation. So let me see.
Cryptopolis. Oh my God. Sorry, Danilo. Cryptopia. Yeah, you're right. Should have. Cryptopia.
Can you see my screen?
Good too. No, it's loading for me. I think we might have a similar issue as last time. Augusto, are you running Discord on your computer, or are you using the web version?
Web version. That may be it.
Yeah, for me, I used to have those problems with the web version. If you want, I can share your slides and you can tell me when to move forward.
Let us maybe change order and someone speaks before me while I install the.
Yeah, that would be
in this computer I don't have the desktop version. I'll do it.
Okay, great. Danilo, do you want to share maybe a Cryptopolis? Correction, not Cryptopia. Also a cool name.
Sure. Let me share my screen here just a second.
Great. I can see
you
it.
see it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I'll try to be fast, maybe in 5 minutes. So just a disclaimer first, I'm not a game developer. I'm a core developer. I joined the project early on, but I did this experiment during the experiment week and also during the ETH Online event. I submitted the project there as well. So this is my project, Cryptopolis, bringing the city simulator that started it all to the crypto era. And I give a brief overview or history about city building games. This is the latest one that launched this month. And going back all the way to the original game, SimCity, which was published in 1989. So 34 years ago, right? So the original game was released under open source license in 2008, and that's what I used to build my game, right? So how the game economics work, you basically start the city with a budget, a 20,000 budget, and then you start building the city, like building industrial zones, residential zones, roads, and so on. You spend your money doing that, and then once a year you get city taxes from the people, right? So how did I introduce crypto in the game? The first step, you bridge tokens from the base layer into the app chain. The game economics is backed by a ERC20 token, right? So I do a bridge, and then I invest 20,000 tokens to build initial game. I choose the city, and I start building the city. Everything that I spend, I transfer tokens from in-game wallet to the people's wallet, and every time the people pays you back in taxes, I transfer tokens back from the people to the in-game wallet. This is an example of how the economics work. So, for example, if you build an industry zone for $100 and 1 year passes. For example, this is October 1900 and this is March 1901. So you had $100 in expenses and, for example, $20 in tax credit. So I move $80 from the city to the people. On the other end, if you had, for example, $220 in taxes, I move 120 the other way, right, from the people to the city. So this is basically how the economics work. How did I build the game? So the first step was to take the original engine of the game, and I built it to the RISC-V architecture. The original code builds unmodified. So this is to build a Cartesi machine, which will provide like a verifiable environment to build a real economics on the game, right? So the second step was to build a Cartesi Rollups application. The Rollups dApp will manage the wallets, will run the game simulation, and take every input that the user does and run the game, right? And keep track of the economics. The last step was to build a brand new UI. It was a very simple UI with just the basics that I needed to make this proof of concept. And I used a bunch of libraries to do that, including the original artwork for the game, which is also open source. So I can do a quick demo. I'll try to be quick. So you can choose, for example, you can choose the map you wanna play on. You create a city. Right, so this is the terrain, the canvas. So you start, for example, by building a power plant, right? And then I can put like a industry zone right next to it. And you can see up here the budget, 16, the date of the game and the population. So I can build a residential zone next, right next to the industry. And then I can build, for example, roads. And you can already see the population, the residential zone growing, and the industry is building as well. It's growing. So at some point, you're gonna see a population here for 80 people. And that's basically how the game works. I've not spent any more time in the game, but you can start building the city, right? So going back to the presentation, sorry. Future improvements. One plan is to run the simulation of the game inside the browser as well, because I'm only running the simulation in the Cartesi dApp, right? So it's on, so to say, the server. So every input I send goes to the server. The server advances the game and sends back the state of the game. So I need to run these inside the browser as well, so it can have like a more real-time experience. And there is a lot of features of the original game that would need to be implemented to have a full experience of the game, right? So this is the final thanks, and that's it.
It's awesome. Super cool, Danilo. Big fan, big fan. You gonna continue building it, or what's the plan?
Maybe, I don't know. As I said, I'm not a game developer, but maybe I'll find some time to work on it.
Yeah, man. What were like the main learnings that you took away from building this?
I learned a lot about some stuff that I needed to learn to build the game, like more in-depth knowledge of the Cartesi machine.
Mm-hmm.
And building the UI is quite challenging, especially for me. And as I said, as a future improvement, I wanted to run the game in the browser. So I actually spent quite some time trying to do that, but then I gave up because I didn't have enough time. So I will probably go back to that problem as well, like running the Cartesi machine inside the browser, right? Because we need a reproducible VM as well in the browser to make sure that we have the right outcome of the game.
That makes sense. Okay.
So there's a lot of details around that. If you guys have any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Thanks, Danilo. Augusto, are you able to come on stage now and share, or how are things looking from your side? I think you're in the audience right now. Otherwise, we can always try to come back to this. Oh, there you are. Great.
So I installed the desktop version here. So let's see if it works now.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
so it's really the
infinite screen
web version. So thanks a lot for the invitation. This is also an experiment for the experiment week. This is a game that I started planning before that. It's basically just an experiment. Again, I'm also not a game developer, but I was thinking like how a game could fit well to the blockchain. I really think that it's that lots of different things have to be experimented. It's a bit like when Nintendo Wii launched. Like we're not gonna have the same games as we had before. We have to really use the new tech to build cool stuff that really stands out. So it's a game about robots fighting on Mars. It's kind of a sandbox, kind of tower defense. If you ever played the Factorio or Mindustry, it has some inspiration from those games. People basically place their bots in their walls, turrets, and things like this, and minerals in the level, and then the rest of the game is auto battle. I do want to say that I spent a lot of time designing, and when I went to implement, I slashed a lot of the things. I think that's something everyone is used to, but since I was not a game developer, I had to get used to this difference. During the design stage, I was thinking, okay, there'll be people playing the game, people designing levels, and people actually doing code. So this idea is, I think, something that at least I hope will grow a lot in the centralized game ecosystem, which is to bring the developers more to the forefront. If it's decentralized, you expect the modding community to be brought together to the main developers. Maybe not even have a clear-cut separation between what's the main development team and what are the modders and level designers, content producers. I think this all should be, just a community. And I'll explain how these three different fronts play out in the game. So the code is very hacky. It's made in Rust, which is not very famous for game development, but I love the language. There's no testing, very poor logging, the documentation is lacking. But it's modular. I think I will be able to bring it to a better stage soon. And the biggest problem, this is something that I tried my best, but I didn't manage to do in the short time we were given, is to bring it to actually the Cartesi machine. The whole game was thought of as something that can be clearly ported to the Cartesi tech, but I didn't do it yet. I was doing everything local on my computer, and let's see how it plays. So I did the UI myself, so it's ugly as hell. So here you can load battlefields or create new ones. So let's see, for example, if you try to load, it say, no, there are no battlefields yet to load, so we have to create one. And this is what would probably be the role of a level designer. You just have to settle for some amount of resources for each player. There are 4 resources, like in my industry. And you can place those in the screen. You can place in here some plutonium on the screen. And you can actually place bots as well. But we're not going to do that. The level is going to be very simplistic, just some resources. And we have to give a token to the users. The token is kind of the objective of the game. So if you have one token, there will be one robot, which is kind of the king in chess. If you kill that bot, game's over. So let's save this. Now we can actually load a battlefield. So you see, this was what the level designer was going to be doing, but it's the same screen as an actual player. So here we are creating a squad. You see that we are given those resources and those in the field here, but we can no longer increase, right? This was settled by the level designer, but we can use this to create bots. So for example, I'm going to create one king here that has a token and has lots of HP and can attack by drilling. This is short range attack, and it can walk. And we can choose the code that it follows. I don't know if you can see here, but there are several codes, and we are following the warrior code. So let's put our king here. And that's it. So this is one of the squads we created for the game. Let's create another squad to fight that one. So here we're going to follow a different strategy. We're going to put a very weak king that can't move, can't attack. It's just standing there and praying that it's not found. And we're going to create warriors that are going to look for the other king. So these are, they can walk, they can attack, I don't know. So they also follow the warrior code here. And let's see how many of them we can buy. Oh, only 2 because of lack of plutonium. Okay, that's life. We put those 2, and now we have 2 squads to play. We can see them fighting, squad 1 and squad 2. And here it is. So they keep looking for each other. You see the blue king here in the bottom. Oh, and the blue squad won because after the red king killed one of the warriors from the blue team, the second warrior had enough HP to kill the strong red king. So this is a basic demo of the game. It's kind of fun to play. The UI is really hitting hard on the player. But I learned a lot during this process. So here, for example, you can see the code for one of the bots. And as I said, I expect people to code more in decentralized games. Like some end users that are on the technical side build their own code and mods and upload them to the game. In Shipped Out, you can do this. You can write code for different AIs and upload them. And this will be compiled to WASM and inserted in the bots. And there is a very nice library called Wasmer that executes these AIs with metering. So there's no way to hack the game like putting some bot that enters an infinite loop and breaks the system. There's no way to do something like this. What else has in the game that I didn't show you? Bots can build other bots. They can collect those resources that I spread on the floor. And if they have enough resources to build another bot, they can. There's long-range guns, which require you to have copper. There's a line of sight algorithm, silly stuff, but and bots can message other bots. But yeah, the big lacking thing here is a way to play this in a decentralized way on the blockchain, where people can upload new levels and people can play on those. People can upload code for new bots on chain. and people can use these new codes inside their squads. And of course, as soon as you have all that, we would like to have an economy that incentivizes all these behaviors, right? It should be interesting, not only for the fun of it, but economically to build mods and new things for the game. So that's it.
Awesome. That's sick, Augusto. So you're gonna, if I heard you correctly, you're gonna be working on this weekend, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun weekend. No, I'm gonna work on this in slow pace. I actually started this before the hackathon, so I'll keep working slow pace on this and trying to bring it to the blockchain.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, if anyone has questions, what were your learnings, Augusto? I mean, I guess you already, if you've taken your time a bit more, maybe you already like digested all the learnings, but I'm curious if there were anything that stuck out that you can recall.
I think maybe that's something that is very clear for everyone in the audience, but since I'm new to game development, I think the cycle of being able to play something before adding any features so that you can evaluate what features to add is the most crucial thing I learned. You know, in the beginning I was planning too much and getting very slow in the actual things on the screen. But as soon as I got something that I could click on and see if I could extract some fun of it, it completely changed the direction of the rest of the project. So I think getting something that is playable, even if it's, awful, it should be the first priority. At least it's gonna be for me from now on.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has questions later on, feel free to write them in the chat and think about it. And in the meantime, we can get started with Release. Thanks so much for joining, Release. Do you want to give a small intro on yourself?
For sure, I would love to. Actually, first of all, I'd like to say like both those games were amazing, and this is great. I'm learning so much, especially like, I mean, I think you all are just thinking in such interesting and in my opinion like a great direction, right? Like especially regarding composability and building like a bot-friendly game. Like I think things like this are things that we'll see that are properties of like games that are thematically blockchain. And so, yeah, it's really really great to hear that you two are building games like this, and makes me very happy because I'm waiting till we see a breakout on-chain game and fighting in that direction as well. And I'm very happy that, smart people like you all who are thinking like this are building games as well. Because that just increases the odds that that's happening. And then we all win. So that's amazing. And yes, I would love to introduce myself. So I am Ulysses, small brain dev. You can call me whatever. I can tell you a little bit about my journey into on-chain gaming and why I'm here. I think that would be a good intro. So let's see where to start. Pretty much my background in crypto was like a while ago, whenever people said decentralized, I would turn my brain off. I'd be like, here we go again. And then I started working for a crypto trading firm. And that's kind of how I learned about crypto. And this was peak DeFi summer. And at this point, I was looking at a bunch of DeFi projects and learning about them, and was kind of thinking like, wow, like programmable money is like a way to run psych experiments on chain, almost like a great way to learn about human behavior. Like programming rules into money we should run like interesting games that are things that psych professors run with 20 students on college campuses, like massively on chain. Like we should use the blockchain as a tool to do stuff like this. And so I spent a year building social experiment type games that had elections and prisoners' dilemmas and were PvP, things like that. And I think at that time I was very technologically savvy and a little naive about the audience I was building for, and also very naive about game development. At the end of that, I was left like thinking a couple of things. Like one, I was left thinking, I don't want to spend a year building a single game. Like, especially in a space like this, like I think shorter and iterative development cycles are way more important, and a way faster frequency of launch is way more important. The second thing I was left thinking is like, there's something interesting in purely psychology, PvP financial games. But I wasn't sure like speculation is it. And so I was left thinking like we have this world computer, we have this shared computer that is the blockchain. The blockchain like makes people feel a stronger sense of ownership. Like there's this new computing platform. I had an inkling that there was like a new type of fund that this could enable, but I had no idea what that was. And so I was just kind of like, what were non-speculative takes, what were non-speculative applications that were still blockchain native and fun and interesting that could be built on chain? And that's where I was left around a year ago. And that led me to work on what I am working on now, which is quickly launching casual, entirely on-chain games. And yes, we're working on 3. And so I'm sure we'll talk more about that on this call. But that's the intro. Any questions about that?
No, it's a wild journey. From a trading firm. Yeah, so you have that kind of like DeFi-ish background, right? Also probably playing a role. But that's awesome. No, I think that's a great intro. Very well explained. But maybe we can actually touch on the games you're focusing on now. Curious.
Yes, 100%. So right now I'm focusing on 2 games. One is called Network States, and the other one, actually, Max, I will ask at the end of this call if the recording can be turned off for a second so I can talk to this audience about some things that I don't want to publicly reveal yet. But we'll do that at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. The game I'm primarily working on right now, the Small Brain Games is working on right now, is called Network States. And Network States is it's a collaboration with a couple of other great builders in the on-chain gaming space, namely Engine Study, 0x Hank, and Moving Castles. And it is an empire building game that's fully on-chain. So how Network States works is you start playing. Here, I can share screen for this, actually. Maybe I can't share screen. Okay, I'll give this like a minute, and if it doesn't work, I will just keep talking.
You don't see the share your screen option?
I think I do. Go live. Amazing. You see a Chrome window?
Oh, yeah, I see something.
Sweet. Okay. Yes, this is still a very in-progress build of Network States, but hopefully it'll give you an idea of how the game works. Network States is an on-chain empire building game. You join in, you create a state, bam, there's your state. And your state gets 1 troop every second at a city, and you can move around. Now, in Network States, everybody's joining in, creating states, trying to take over each other's cities. However, as the game is being played, something cool is happening. The entire on-chain state is being fed to GPT-4, and GPT-4 is generating lore. So you can see, like, I just created a state called Frostforge, which is a little description, and the government, and a president, and a currency, population, area. And like, as I play this game, as I have battles with other states, as I take over other states' cities, as other states take over my cities, as I get bonuses, etc., all of that state about the game is fed to GPT-4, and GPT-4 continues to generate this Wikipedia, like right now it's hard-coded, it's the same name, but GPT-4 continues to generate this Wikipedia-like wiki of all the lore in the history of this world. And so as people play, you get this story that's created based on your actions. And so that's Network States. And honestly, I'm really excited about it because it connects a bunch of things. It connects a thesis we had about blockchains enabling ownership, and ownership has, like, what do blockchains do? Blockchains let you own things, make people feel like they own things. And that's useful because we can build money on top of it and build speculation and ownership on top of it. But maybe it's also useful because if people feel like they own something, they care about a story a lot more. Testing out that thesis. It's testing out a ton of the composability stuff that a lot of people on this call mentioned. people can build bots. People can build alliances on top. I can say like, hey, your state and my state, we're going to stake 3 ETH in this contract and we can't attack each other. But if we do, whoever initiated the attack gets to take the ETH. You can do crazy stuff like that. And especially when the world is real and when the world has a story that people care about, people really, really might want to control that narrative into their stakes. And also, it's a little bit of a technical flex because this chain will be done actually with Cartesi. This isn't even an issue, right? Because you all can write code in C++ and Rust and don't need to worry about a lot of performance constraints on an app-specific rollup. But network states is actually not going to be deployed on an app-specific rollup. And so to do things like multiple cities and having troop growth that is tied to the area of your state and the total amount of troops in your state, and doing all of that in constant time, there's a ton of tricks that go, like mathematical tricks that go into that. So that's what we're excited to show. On top of that as well, I know I'm dumping a ton of information on you, so I will be like, ask me questions to break this down in a second. But on top of that, we actually are working with some partners on a cryptographic fog of war for network states as well. And so this is a very ambitious project, and a lot of things will come together, but we will have an initial playable version in Istanbul. So Max, please, we will be at the table. There'll be like a gaming table in Istanbul in AW Week where network states will be running. So I would love for you to come check it out. But yes, this is network states. This is one primary game we are working on. And yeah, so happy to show it to you all.
Crazy. Yeah, this is wild. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to play it yet. I know you guys had playtests at some point where you will have, I guess you'll have some in Istanbul as well, but yeah, absolutely wild. I also didn't have the full context with the whole GPT-4 lore getting like created as things evolve. I think that's brilliant. It's great.
Yeah, it should be amazing. And we have playtests running in the Small Brain Discord regularly. There will actually be one early next week, probably Tuesday, that has not been announced yet. So yeah, anybody here can jump in and come to that.
Very cool, very cool. I'm wondering if we can take, because I know you also worked on Words 3, right? That was like the first game that you, I think, launched or you started building last year, right?
Yes.
Do you want to touch on that one a little bit?
I would love to. So let me actually go to the website. The indexer I stopped running, so it'll take a second to load, but I will talk as it loads. Yes, I would love to talk about Words 3. So Words 3 it was the first fully on-chain game that Small Brain Games built. And it was first launched about a year ago in November and relaunched with a new and improved version a couple of months ago, actually. And so Words 3 is a game that is a little like crossword games like Scrabble, but not exactly like it at all. How it works is there's an infinite grid. It starts with one word on it. Anybody can play additional crosswords on that word. So any word that uses at least one letter in that word. And then you can build off words other people play. Anybody can play any letters at any time. However, each letter has a price, and that price changes with demand. So if a ton of people are playing the letter A will be more expensive, but over time, if nobody plays the letter A, the price of letter A will fall, and so on with every single other letter. All the money that people play goes into a prize pool, and the prize pool is split by the amount of points you have at the end of the game. And so the gameplay of Words 3 is kind of like, you jump into this board, the board is constantly changing. Everybody's playing on the same board. Words are being added, like spaces are being taken, branches are being created on the board, and prices of letters are also constantly changing as people play. And you have to find interesting, cheap, but high value words to play on this board. And if you score more points for less money than your friends, you take their money. And so that's how Words 3 works. And all the logic is fully implemented on chain, whether words are in the English language, the point scoring, all of that is implemented on EVM mainnet. So not Ethereum mainnet, but the game initially launched on Optimism mainnet and then on Base. And Words 3 was a ton of fun. We had a little bit less than 100 players the first time, a little bit more than 100 players the second time. This was each player spent around $100 to $1,000 on the game. So there was $10K that went through it the first time, $20K the second time. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. Like, let me see if this is still not loaded, but I will show you when it loads. Yeah, so that's like one of the things that I really love about Words 3 is, one, it leans into like a new type of game that you can only build on chain, right? Like a game with dynamic pay-ins and payouts that's a crossword game is like something crazy that you can only build if it's fully on chain, because that's a very hard thing to pull off and just like doesn't thematically fit the types of games that work on not world computers. And the second thing I loved about Words 3 is it really leaned into like the client agnosticity and the interoperability part of the blockchain, because both rounds, the first round lasted 6 days, the second round lasted 4 days, extremely short rounds. And there were multiple community tools built each round. A tool to visualize stats, a tool to see who was earning the most money, a community client. Like this is amazing. And this, like, even the fact that in less than a week there are people building on top of it, I think like really excited me, because you can put out a core idea of a game and then the game can become something of its own. And that was really cool to see.
Super cool. Yeah, we've had like a few guest speakers on in the past, and it's interesting to see. I know some people lean into more into like the composability side. Some try to avoid like the financial side. Some people just lean in full finance. How would you? So you think you're kind of feel like you're trying to do a bit of both, like the composability side where people are adding like features on top, like especially like stat stuff. I saw also one person, we can touch on that in a bit, like doing some a scripting as well to kind of get some advantages. But also like the financial side, right? Which is really something I think some teams are maybe a bit more wary about. I'm curious how you think about it. Like, do you see a risk in like being, more like not a regulatory risk or anything, more just like, there's always that question of like, should we mix like money and fun, those kind of things. Like, how do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about it a lot. I think like there's a couple of answers to that question. The first one is that when I think about money and fun, like what don't think I'm afraid to stay away from money. I think I'm interested in the design space, like partially interested in the design space of, is it fun to bet a little bit of money to try to take a little bit of money from your friends? Like that is very interesting to me. What I do stay away from is speculation. And not that I have like anything against speculation. That I think brings in a totally different dynamic to games that, one, like might be a dangerous design space, and two, just like isn't a design space I'm personally interested in. Like I'm personally interested in building things on chain that they use blockchain affordances in other ways. And so that's like kind of how I approach the financial aspect, is like, is this a speculative thing, like a purely speculative thing, or is this a fun way to try to take money from your friends and maybe lose some money to your friends? And it's okay because it's all in good fun. That's like how I think about that. But what I will say is like, designing games for blockchains, like one, if you're putting it on a mainnet, it's hard to avoid money if you don't financialize it, and it's a good game, somebody else will. And two, when money enters the chat, like this actually ties a lot into your bot question as well. Like the design space becomes a little bit different because you're really, really thinking about incentives, and the game becomes really stupid if there's a clearly optimal strategy. Because when there's money involved, because there's a clearly optimal strategy, like people will just run it. There's less like chaotic behavior, although there is some, and the game becomes really stupid to play. So the kind of tension is like, we don't want a game with randomness, because that's like kind of against the grain on chain, although you can pull that off if need be. But assuming you have no randomness in your game, you want financial incentives on top of it, you need to design a game where there isn't an obvious optimal strategy. And that is there's some tension in. And second of all, you also need to design a game where bots and humans can play together, because anti-bot behavior is very, very difficult on chain, especially again if there's money involved. Like people have an incentive to build bots that play very well. And so how do you build a game that has a wealth of strategies that are good, some of which that humans are better at than bots, and some of which that bots are better at than humans. Because you need to lean into bots if you're building an on-chain game. And so with Words 3, like how we thought about this is, in Words 3, like there's a lot going into each move. So first of all, like time matters a lot. The board is constantly changing, prices are constantly changing. And so if you're building a bot, your bot has to run really fast. Second of all, like there's some strategies which bots might be great at, like finding cheap S's to snipe across the board or helping you search for good words and quickly looking through them. But like thinking through, I put this word here, will other people build on top of it? In Words 3, you get rewards if other people build on your word. Will other people build on top of it? What does it open up that other people might play on? Like questions like that are very, very difficult for bots to answer, and things that like humans who have an intuitive understanding of word games are actually way better at. And so like it's this kind of interesting dynamic where some players who did well made bots. Actually, the player who got third place built a scripting bot, which they used to farm point multiplier tiles, so build words in interesting ways to get point multiplier tiles. But the player who joined late in the game and got first place did not use a bot at all, was just a great word game player. And so like that's really cool. Like that's, I think, like the right type of approach, which is that you want a game where bots and humans can play together, especially if there are financial incentives involved. And in small brain games, like we lean into this. Like the code is open source. For Words 3 in the next release, we're just going to release a bot kit with it, with an example bot. Like we want people to build bots for this game. We think it makes the game more fun, and like there are human strategies and bot strategies, and all of them should happen together.
Okay, that was an awesome answer. You already answered the whole thing. That's super interesting. Because yeah, I think okay, so you would have essentially the optimal strategy is for someone to use a bot and still be a human as well, right? And not just say like, hey, bot, do everything for me, but you'll need both.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually unclear what the optimal strategy is. And that is because the trick is, like the mental trick is, there's no randomness involved in the game. It's a deterministic game. But other people's behavior affects what is the best strategy. And how other people are going to behave when there's no like clearly mathematically optimal strat is a tough thing to predict. And so because you're thinking about like, oh, will like new people come into this game and then want to play on my word? Like how will prices look in the future of these letters? And so maybe like my word has letters that will have a high price and people want to build on them and all get rewards. Like questions like that are things that people have a bunch of different opinions on, and that will reflect how the game works way more so than something that a bot can just figure out and have the right answer to. And that's where like people can build bots. It's honestly a little bit like trading in that sense. Like there are some strategies which like can be automated and are bot wars. And in the same market, there are some strategies which actually require like intuitive and higher order and like different types of thinking, and that people are better at.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's very interesting. Is this similar thinking also like something you're embedding in network states, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it is. A lot of the same things apply in network states. The one thing that doesn't apply in network states is Sybil resistance, actually, which is another thing that every on-chain game needs to think about, which is you cannot expect one wallet to be one human. And actually, if it's optimal to play across multiple accounts, people will do so. In Words 3, Sybil resistance is not an issue because points get split, rewards get split proportionally according to points. So, even if you play across 4 wallets, you're just like, it's kind of exactly the same as if you play across one. And so it might be just slightly better to play across one wallet, so it's more organized. But in network states, you have to go across Sybil with like a cost to enter. But yes, like very, very similar considerations in network states. Like you can build bots that are constantly online, that look for where people are and chase after them. Very difficult to do with Fog of War. But a human might be able to move their troops around in an interesting way that gets around a simple bot. This game, Network States, is actually inspired by Generals.io, which is a browser game that leans into botting heavily. And so it's kind of been proven out that the mechanics of this game are something that people can have a lot of fun playing, but also that like there is a large botting community around, which is why like we thought it was a great game to draw from and learn from and modify to build Network States.
Interesting. What was there? Why did you call it network states, by the way?
Why are we calling it Network States?
Yeah.
Yeah, just because exactly. Like it's inspired by the group of people in the Network States community that are kind of adjacent to, or like some of them overlap with a lot of people in the crypto community. And we were just interested by this idea that people were in the near future, going to form the kind of decentralized states. And so that's the theme we went with for all the lore in the game that's generated. So all the states will be, like interesting technological future network states and takes on them. And actually a lot of the lore draws from a lot of the existing network states that are out there. No names are named, but if you were familiar with that community, you will be able to see where a lot of the inspiration comes from. And yes, also this is the map for the last round of Words 3. So here's all the words that people played. It's kind of fun to just look through. There are crazy branches that keep going off. Wow. It just kind of keeps going. A little bit. Yep. Can scroll through this. I have
like an infinite map, or?
Yeah, it's an infinite grid. So the words can, int 32. So, infinite in quotes, but the words can go off to infinity.
And how do you think about, because I think the play session you did last time was like 6 days, right? Or something like that?
Yes.
Is the goal for something like this to like run forever, or how do you think about that?
It is actually for it to run forever. And so let me stop streaming. It is actually the goal. Yes. Okay. Yeah. The goal is for it to run forever. And that is like the 6-day sessions are just because it's in like a beta stage. Like we're just testing it, and like mechanics we've learned are very, very difficult to test when they have money involved on testnet, just because people behave very differently. So you do a lot of testing on testnet. Eventually you need to test on mainnet. And so we do rounds on mainnet. But the game will actually relaunch in late November soon. And that'll be another test round. But we're soon gearing up to an infinite launch where one round will kick off the next, and the game will just run to infinity. And parameters of the game, like pricing parameters of the game and some meta parameters, will like change depending on the gameplay in the last round. And like the last word of the last round will be the first word of the next round. It'll probably run weekly. We're not sure exactly on the cadence yet. But yep, that is the future of Words 3, is one game will kick off the next, and it'll be constantly running.
Interesting. I think, Danilo, you have a question, right?
Yeah, I have a question about, actually, you don't know actually who is playing the game, right? So you don't know if it's an AI or a human, but do you have any take of the trend of AI versus human in that game in particular? Because maybe AI would kill it in that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if AI would kill it, because like, while AI might be great at finding interesting words and like getting to point multipliers, it might be true that like a simple Python script's actually better at that than AI, because you can brute force it and it's deterministic, like kind of what the answer is. And then like, I actually don't know if an AI is better than like a person at like thinking about where prices are going to go and how people are going to behave on top of words and how other players are going to behave on top of words, and then making interesting moves to do that. Maybe it is. I'm really not sure. I think it will be extremely fun to find out.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. And so is network states also, I'm assuming network states is also like kind of infinite as well,
Yep,
right?
it is. Network states is
Nice.
played on a similarly infinite grid. There's like some increasing border logic going on to make sure people just don't expand into infinity at one side and people like spawn near each other, but it's essentially infinite, yes.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Nice. Yeah, if anyone else has questions, feel free to interrupt or ask in the chat. I'm curious. I recall one of your objectives. I think you had a demo last year or something. I found an old recording, and you mentioned you wanted to make it as easy as possible for sort of anyone to play, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think you mentioned like, parents, moms, dads, that if they can play the game, that's sort of like one of the things you're aiming for. Is that still something you're kind of gearing up for, or how do you see that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think there's like two reasons why. The first one's like personal and the second one's like technical. The personal reason is like at first I was like, I'm not a gamer. Like I never played, like, you wouldn't characterize me as a gamer in the initial sense of the word. However, like if I do think about it, like I am a gamer. Like I played a lot of social games, I played a lot of board games, I played a lot of games with friends. And then I realized like kind of like if I'm building on-chain games, this is the thing I was interested in. I wanted to make games that I would like. So like that's the personal reason why I'm doing stuff like that. The technical reason why I'm really excited about it is like I think we're at a point where like onboarding for simple casual games and the feeling for simple casual games on chain can mirror the experience of those in Web 2. Like we're not fighting with other Web3 games. There are barely any. We're fighting with like all the things that can grab somebody's attention. And like games are a consumer product of a consumer product. Like every little thing about the experience matters. And we're not fully there yet, but we are getting meaningfully closer to a point where like the UX and the feeling of a simple on-chain game can match that of a Web 2 game. Or if it's Web 2 equivalent. But you get all these like crazy things that you can do on chain that you couldn't in that world. So that's what really excites me. That's why I'm like excited about pushing that forward.
Maybe question, because as you said, like you're kind of going for like kind of quick iterations, ship fast, break things, test things out. And I think I'm curious, like how do you know when something is sort of ready? How do you make sure to like kind of get that kind of iterative like process going, right? Because I think that's something maybe that people tend to struggle with, but I think it's quite necessary, especially in the early stages today. We don't really know exactly yet what works, so we need to test things out, right? So I'm curious, like what your thinking is there.
Yeah, a couple of things. Like, first of all, we're trying to do three things. They're all hard. One is build a new thing that's fun. Two is build it on a new technology. And three is distribute it, right? And so, like, the least of these things we can think about, the better. And so one thing we do if we want to ship fast is, we start with a foundation of something that is proven to already be fun. And, like, messing with the mechanics a little bit changes the game totally. Like making crypto native changes the game totally, but at least there is something that at the core people find fun and we know is fun here. That helps a lot with like being able to get to the end faster. There's also a ton of inspiration to draw on, and you need to make less choices, which is always good when you're trying to ship fast. So that's one part of the mentality. The second thing is just like, I think like the second thing is it's honestly a mindset. Like it's less so like strategy or some like technical thing, and it's more so like saying you have the ship fast mindset and repeating it kind of makes it actually happen. Like, and when it's the point where the rule we have is like after we play test a game twice and there's no changes, like after we have a play test where there's no changes we want to make after the play test, that aren't like, like add this feature that's clearly a nice to have, like anything like that. Like the moment we've had a play test where people feel the core mechanic of the game and it's fun and they're getting it and there's no terrible bugs, that's when it's ready to ship, and we don't worry about like all the little things on top. And so the first Word 3 shipped with like the grid that crashed your computer because it was loading so slowly and wasn't even a game engine. They were all just divs. It was just like the fastest path there possible. And then this most recent version was much better built out and ran much more smoothly. And the next version will run even better, but that's because, you know, the game is matured now. Yeah, and so that's what I'd say. It's like starting from a base of fun mindset and just ship, like having a very low bar to like that's the earliest time to ship. I will say what we do have a high bar for is security. That's the thing that we spend time on and that we take very, very seriously before launching.
Interesting. No, that's,
just
that's
just because the games are immutable, right? And like when they're up, they cannot be upgraded or changed, and there's no way for the team to like recover funds because that would make the game ruggable, right? It's the same thing, and so yeah, security is important.
No, 100%. I think Danilo also asked previously, like, what is their main reason to make the board infinite? So
yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think, like, to be honest with you, the reason is like vibes. The reason is like it's thematically blockchain. Like there's something interesting about something being on chain forever with an infinite board. Like this could expand to infinity and will live to infinity. Like it feels like thematically the right thing to do for an on-chain game. And while like, you know, the board could probably be fairly large and allow for gameplay, and then maybe it would get filled up and change behavior, I actually think it like just like opens up people's minds that this thing can be built to infinity. Like it makes it so much more fun and meaningful. Yeah, it's not like a scientific answer to that question. It's very vibes answer to that question, but that's totally why.
No, that's sick. Maybe really we can also talk a bit about, I know you've kind of built like a collective or community with different game builders. Curious if you want to touch a bit on the, you know, other games that, you know, you're playtesting or supporting, you know, within your Discord community.
Oh my God, I'd love to. And so like, yes, the Small Brain community pretty much like is a community of people very, very interested in on-chain games. Actually, like I'll drop the link to both here if people want to check out playtests. How do I get this link? Yes, if people want to check out playtests, you really should. They run regularly in here. And then the drawing game I mentioned will be the next tweet on this Twitter. So that's where you can join the community, be part of these things. But the Small Brain community is like a group. It's just people interested in fully on-chain games. Like it's a small but very, very active community of people who like were Dark Forest OGs, have played like almost every on-chain game there is. Like they're just excited about that realm of stuff. And so we run regular playtests for like Words 3. This drawing game was reached out to community members who are active and gave them playtest access to, like Small Brain games and other games as well that are playtesting that are vibes aligned. Essentially like building games that we would call Small Brain games if we built them internally, you know? And to them, we offer a group of dedicated playtesters in the on-chain game space who, you know, will be very active and excited to see their game. And that's super, super valuable to somebody building things on chain. One, because these people are like familiar with all the weirdness that it takes to get set up with an on-chain game before onboarding's worked out, you know, like wallet onboarding, all this fun stuff. I'm getting testnet ETH and like all this like annoying ritual stuff you need to go through to playtest a game. And two, like they're very active and care and are excited about it. And so that's super valuable for an early game though to have. Currently, the only we've had lots of games tested in the Discord, notably Underverse and Dark Seas were two fully on-chain games that we're testing there. The only non-Small Brain game right now that's actively testing there is this game called Gall by Engine Study. And that's a fully on-chain road building game. And God, this game is pushing the boundaries of like visually what an on-chain game is like, because the creator is like a legit amazing designer and game dev. And so, you know, this game like is beautiful and feels so snappy and cinematic and is built in Unity and connects, you know, Unity to on-chain state a ton of technically interesting stuff going on there. Yeah, it's in my opinion like the most like sophisticated and visually beautiful on-chain game there is by far. So 100% check that out. That one actually just started playtesting on. Oh my god, it's playtesting in 3 hours again privately, and so we're gearing up towards the Small Brain Games Discord playtest, and so that'll happen soon.
Super cool. Yeah, definitely recommend checking out the Discord. I'm already in there, but for anyone else who wants to get their hands dirty and play some games, definitely get in there. Lucius, I'm curious. So I feel like also like the game builder community is like the on-chain game builder community is like rather small today. How do you think of like distributing, getting like people that aren't maybe in Web3 yet, kind of how to get them to also play these games? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think like, yeah, I do. I mean, I think like there's two things. Like one is I actually don't think we're fully ready. There's probably just traditional marketing pushes that get you kind of far. I don't think we're fully ready in terms of onboarding yet. Like right now, like although we're making great steps with each game towards a game that is just fully accessible and playable by a Web2 audience, there's still like a lot of blockchain-y stuff that you feel and that like we don't think about as people in the on-chain world, but that is just like really scary to people who haven't interacted a lot with crypto. And so a lot of that still needs to be got around. That's actually one of the reasons why I'm very excited to see what you all think of this game that's about to launch, because I just am so excited. Like, I think it's a huge step in this direction. And two, it's like capturing a little bit of the crypto viral marketing fire, and merging those two somehow. That's what my intuition says it is. I don't think we know exactly what it looks like yet because nobody's done it, right? But I think it will be something of that flavor.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, super cool. Do you have like any tips for builders who are getting started, or people like Danilo, for example, who's not a game dev, on a day to day, but who's building was kind of built the game as well, or who might continue building it?
I mean, there are a couple of things I've learned, but like first of all, like I think like the stuff Danilo was working on was amazing. Like porting existing game, like could just port the game kind of raw, which was amazing. That's really cool that Cartesi enables that, and then putting interesting economic mechanics on top of it, like that's a very interesting direction. I think that like the biggest thing I would say is like if anybody's interested in this stuff, like right now is by far the best time to build on-chain games for a couple of reasons. Like first of all, there's so many tools now. There's literally things like Cartesi, right? Like this is amazing. I learned in depth about this today. So this is cool. There's like tools like Mud. There's onboarding tools like Privy. Like there's wealth of app-specific rollups. Like block space is becoming cheap and plentiful. There are becoming developer libraries that let you write code in Solidity in much cleaner ways that enabled way more complex apps. There are rollups that let you write code in existing programming languages. And onboarding is becoming easy and coming to the point where like it could be easy for non-crypto users to jump into these things. And so like I really just feel we're at this tipping point where like the small group of on-chain games builders right now are slightly early to the curve, but with all of these things in place, it's like kind of obvious that a ton of people will still start building on-chain games soon, just because like when it's obvious that you can and that it's powerful too, people will do it. Yeah, and so like my advice to builders is just like if you're interested in this stuff, like there's all the tools are out there. And like have just been out there. They're all new, but they're there, and they're like ready to be connected to make crazy experiences. And yeah, I think we're at the point where like the infra is starting to enable really cool stuff. And so now is the time if you want to build interesting, fully on-chain experiences.
Awesome. Yeah, we have a couple minutes left, so if anyone wants to ask anything, please do. Maybe from my side, at least, as I'm curious, like you mentioned earlier, you didn't go the app-specific rollup route. You decided to launch, for example, Words 3 on Base. I'm not sure where you're launching network states, but Like, what was the thinking behind that? Like, is there any specific reason?
Yeah, great question. And so like the app-specific rollup route is definitely one that we will explore, and I'm sure we will use for a launch in the future. It just makes sense too. Words 3 actually doesn't make sense to launch on an app-specific rollup. One, because liquidity on the chain matters, right? Like your user experience of playing Words 3 is significantly better if you don't have to bridge. And so being on a chain where there is a lot of like liquidity is useful for the game. And the second thing is it's like not that gas intensive and there's not like that high of a transaction count. Like it's more like strategizing when you're going to play a word and then playing a word. And playing words is expensive. There's a Merkle proof associated with proving the words in the English language. And so there's a lot of call data costs. It's around like 600K gas per move. But that's very, very cheap on like an optimistic L2. And so given that trade-off, right, where like you want cheap gas and you also want liquidity and the transaction speed required, the transaction frequency required, and the gas cost of the game, optimistic L2s make a ton of sense to deploy it on. So that's why we deployed it on Optimism in that base. With games like Network States, actually, like app-specific rollups do enter the chat, so to say, a little bit more. And the question is really like how much, because you make a transaction every second in Network States, right? And so app-specific rollups like are something we are considering and will consider in the future as we launch that game. And we also don't know like whether there will be financial mechanics or what they are on top of that game yet. So both of those things, yeah. And so depending on what those are and what the requirements of those are, that might be an argument. And like if it's important, there's a lot of liquidity on a chain, that might be an argument against app-specific rollups. But if we want to do more complicated game logic and composabilities we're leaning towards, that's an argument for them. So that's how I see it. It's like a trade-off space about. It's this trade-off space, and that's how we make our decisions.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a great answer. Danilo, you want to ask a question?
I don't have a specific question. I just wanted to hear more about onboarding challenges you are having with the new game without disclosing anything you don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, the new game is a fully mobile game, right? And so we use a lot of the same onboarding that FriendTech does. Actually, I mean, they did a really good job in making it like social onboarding easy, and literally figuring out what words to use. And so it does a lot of that. And then like second of all, it's entirely on chain. So like the mobile app will sync blockchain state. No servers were harmed in the making of that game. It is a phone and a blockchain. I mean, obviously indexers and like RPCs and that stuff, but you know, like you know what I mean. and so that's really, really interesting. I actually think with this one, it'll be up in a couple of days, and there'll be a lot more to talk about then. In general, onboarding challenges, though, I could speak more to is like the biggest thing that people dropped off when they played Words 3 is a bunch of people were like, "This is a cool word game. I want to play. What is a seed phrase?" Right? Like this was something where I'm like, oh my god! Like now I need to explain not only what a wallet and a seed phrase is, but also like what an optimistic rollup is and why you are bridging funds to it. And like, this is so much to explain to somebody, right? Like if they just want to play a word game, like why are they learning about bridging funds and optimistic and rollups and even like wallets and seed phrases? Like, it's like they need to take a course before they can play a simple game. and yeah, like that's just the problem right there. Like that's the simplest way I can put it. It's like when somebody who's never made a MetaMask that comes to you and is like, I want to play your word game on an L2. Like, how do you get them onboarded in less than a tweet worth of words? That's still a problem that I don't know the answer to, but one I think we're getting closer to.
No,
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
I shared also in the chat, I think your starter kit for on-chain mobile games, the PWA starter kit. That might be also
Yes.
of interest for.
Yes, anybody who's building mobile on-chain games, the game I'm working on builds on this starter kit, and actually, like, so very soon there'll be an example game and a ton of improvements pushed to that. So, yeah, and I know a couple of people building mobile on-chain games on that as well. So please just reach out to me. We'll answer any dev questions if you are interested in building a mobile on-chain game.
Awesome. I think we're almost at the end here. At least, do you have any questions for us, or does anyone else have a last question to close?
Yeah, no, this is great. Like, I am so happy you invited me to this. I had a ton of fun. Like, yeah, I know I just talked a lot, so please, anybody in the audience, anything, feel free to.
No, this was amazing. You talk a lot, but like super insightful and concise. So it's been amazing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we can close it here then. Oh, I see one more question in the chat. Look, okay. Yeah, you guys should connect. Alok is doing some cool games as well on iOS, side. But yeah, thanks again everyone for joining. At least appreciate it again. It was amazing. I hope to see everyone in a month. We'll have another session. And yeah, let's keep it rolling and talk to everyone soon.